Pianist composer Marcus Roberts, welcome to Cultural Attaché.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
So, the reason for our talking is the 100th anniversary of Rhapsody in Blue. And for anybody who knows your work, your album Portraits in Blue sort of gave us all a new way of hearing that composition by George Gershwin. What do you remember about the first time you heard Rhapsody in Blue?
I was a child, probably 12 years old, maybe 13. And the funny thing is, I remember hearing the piece, but when I first heard it, I didn't know that's what it was called. Because I think I heard it on the radio, maybe in the middle of it or something. And I was really attracted to it, just the sound of it. It was soulful. I could tell it had something in it that I could identify with. And of course, years later, I figured out that it was indeed Rhapsody in Blue. And I think that's what ultimately made me want to do something different with it.
What was it that you heard in the music that you could relate to?
I think just the themes, of course, now that I'm grown up and I've been out here playing a long time, uh, I don't know if I was thinking this way as a kid, but I think it was the fact that the themes were relatable to me, meaning they seemed to come right out of my cultural experience. Because the themes, you know, it just has a soulful rhythmic flair to it. And I was attracted to that. And also just the piano part was really cool. It was great to hear like the orchestra and but it sounded American to me, I think is what it is. And again, I don't know if I was thinking in any kind of sophisticated way as a kid about it, but when I look back, that's probably what it was.
Do you have in stored in your memory somewhere any sense of whether that was the jazz band version or the concert version you heard?
I don't know.
Okay,
I'm assuming it was the orchestra version.
right, right. Well, when I heard your recording of Rhapsody in Blue, which lets allows us as an audience through your brilliance sort of understand where Gershwin got this music and also expands on it, in my
Right,
opinion, to allow us to hear harmonies that Gershwin could never have heard because they weren't things that were being used at the time. And
right.
I'm wondering what your relationship is with the history of this piece and the consideration of the piece in light of a lot of people being concerned that Gershwin appropriated music that wasn't his or music that he was hearing around him.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that. I haven't confirmed it 100%. The truth is that composers always take from other composers. This does happen. For me, I just knew that what he was doing with the piece, I knew that I could update it. I knew that I could bring it at that time into the 20th century and of course now into the 21st century because of what you just said. Duke Ellington, we have 50 years of his work. We have the great John Coltrane, Thelonious Monk. We have Billie Holiday and Ella Fitzgerald. We have all this great jazz music that we now can use to help inform the piece. And we have bass and drums now, right? We didn't really have that exactly in 1924. We didn't have what we would consider to be quote unquote rhythm section, piano, upright bass, and trap set. We didn't have that. So just the fact that we could use all of these modern tools and real modern jazz meant that I was able to then reclaim the piece and redo it with an actual agenda of having jazz being the forefront of it. And I think that's what was exciting for me.
You know, the first time I heard Rhapsody in Blue, it instantaneously became and remains one of my favorite pieces of music ever written. And when I heard your recording, I thought, well, that's interesting to sort of expand on it and do variations on it, not knowing that Billy Strayhorn had written an arrangement for Duke Ellington, for instance, that predated
Right.
what you did. And then later hearing that Chick Corea had his own interpretation and Laura Downs has just released a new album with the work reimagined. Why do you think this work lends itself to rethinking more than other pieces of music from the repertoire?
I think it's just because he's using American themes. He's using themes that clearly come out of the African American experience. And as Dvorak said, that's really the cultural identity of the country. That's where the themes should primarily come from. Not exclusively, but that's the richest soil that we have. So again, I think that it's ripe for improvisation because the rhythms are clear. You know, they sound American. You can hear the blues element in the melodies, and I think that's what makes it work. You know, when I did it back in '96, a lot of critics were not too happy about it at the time. Nobody, I know different people. Of course, there's the Ellington version of it in, I believe, '55 or so that he did. Nobody really did it though with the real intention of improvising on it and bringing it literally into the jazz environment with the specific agenda of improvising on it and recreating it. And I think that's me doing that has made it clear that not only can you do it, but you should do it. And there should be many versions of it where people can do what they want with it. It'll still be recognizable. It's one of the few tunes that you can do that with, and America still knows what it is.
You know, it's I spoke to Leonard Slotkin for these interviews that I'm doing about this 100th anniversary, who has conducted it many times, only recorded Rhapsody in Blue once in 1974. And I asked him why he felt it was ripe for improvisation. And he said, you look at the structure of the piece. It's really a lot of cadenzas
Yep,
with,
that's right.
with brief moments for the orchestra until late in the piece when the orchestra has a more formal role. And his point of view is that that allows room for the long tradition of improvising cadenzas. Was that part of your thought process?
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Basically, in the original score, it basically says something to the equivalent of "Wait for George to nod" or something, or "Watch George." I mean, so he was probably improvising on it himself when he premiered it at Aeolian Hall in '24. So yeah, the piano cadenzas are wide open for improvisation, and in my case, I'm using all of the elements of our great tradition in America and what that I can understand from European tradition as well. So when I play it, I I literally take the themes and surround them with a feeling, whether it's gospel music, whether it's uh, French Ravel or something like that, what, you know, whatever it may be. But the goal for me is to present the piano based on all of the music that I've heard in my life up till now, and what of it that I understand, and put it in that context. So that that's what makes it exciting, and also having a piano trio, right? Having uh, a bass player and a drummer who's also there. So now we're all collectively improvising. So that really produces the authentic jazz environment. And then when the orchestra is put in the middle of that, it really nails it down as a true jazz performance, or a good collaborative performance between jazz and classical music, which, by the way, shouldn't be as separated as they for some reason are. It's a lot like a lot of the tribes in our country. We really shouldn't be so separate. We should be much more inclusive.
I completely agree. When I first heard you perform this work with your trio and with an orchestra, I was pleasantly surprised that it wasn't a note for note copy of what you had recorded, that you are continually to improvise on it. Do you think your journey with this piece and how you can improvise on it will continue to evolve as it has, since this album came out?
Oh yeah, yeah. At this point, when we play it, it's never the same ever. And I have to tell conductors, don't expect me to repeat things, because it's going to be different every time. Um, and it gives the orchestra a chance to really see how jazz actually works using familiar material for them. So and then we get to hear them interpret it and do their thing with it. So I think it's been a great way for jazz and classical musicians to have a sense of common ground, sense of real actual communion as we play this piece together and get to know the music together, and it helps us to have honestly a true feeling of unity and community through playing this great work.
How is your improvisatorial I'm sorry, how has your improvisational relationship with Rhapsody in Blue evolved since you recorded it?
Well, it's just something that evolves based on music that I've played, music that I've listened to, and of course, every time you do it, you're getting more and more information about the different things you can do, the different things that work. Um, it's, I guess, I would say for me now, it feels very comfortable to play it. You know, I don't have any sense of nervousness or apprehension or anything like that. I feel very comfortable because the the attitude I have is that as long as both art forms are authentically represented, that's what's important to me. And that gives the audience an experience that they can then take and feel about it however they feel about it. You see? So it's a living work. It's a living document. I feel like Rhapsody in Blue is one of these pieces. It's alive every time we play it. And when people hear it, it's fascinating just to see the different reactions that we get that are all positive, I must say.
Well, and it's good that you have a good relationship with it still, because I'm assuming you're very busy this year performing it.
Yeah, yes, I am. Yeah, if people really want to play it, and they should. So all the orchestras, and it seems like there's still a big audience for the piece, and I think that's fantastic. I hope that it'll be around for another 100 years, and I hope that there'll be other music that America will fall in love with, that we can continue to have similar ways to collaborate jazz and classical music.
There was an interesting story that Ethan Iverson wrote for the New York Times a week and a half ago, where he suggested that if Rhapsody in Blue is a masterpiece, it may be the worst masterpiece. And one of the cruxes of his opinion was that it held back opportunities for other people who could have done the same thing. And that Gershwin's appropriation of other people's music was problematic, but that still held other opportunities away from others. Do you share that opinion?
Well, look, it's been a struggle. There's no secret there. There's obviously been a lot of struggle with minorities in this country, not just in terms of opportunities in music, but with a bunch of stuff. So I think that that may be true. Um, the fact is, had he not written it, I think there still would have been struggle. So I like to look at it more from the standpoint that he did it, and it has opened up, frankly, eventually opportunities for people to still do whatever it was that they were going to do. I can't specifically comment on who was held back or how. Obviously, there's truth in it, but it's not just George Gershwin. It's not like it's George Gershwin's fault that he did that, right? Uh, I just think the main thing that we have to focus on is whether it happened or not. In this country, let's see if we can get away from doing stuff like that, and let's really use all of our efforts, all of our collective power to include people and give them opportunity to succeed regardless of race, creed, or gender.
Right. Aaron Deal, another jazz pianist, is quoted as saying about the recording you did. He said that you collectively managed to turn the work on its head, yet also align it with a deeper understanding of the musical references. I think that sounds like a strong endorsement for what you've done with Rhapsody in Blue, don't you?
Oh, absolutely. And he's a fantastic young pianist. He's doing all kinds of great things. So he's going to be a name that you will continue to hear um, as things move on. Uh, and he's very astute and has a very deep love and respect for all music. So coming from him, that's certainly I do appreciate his point of view on that.
Yeah, he said that the music that people should be referencing from that period that was important were works like Carolina Shout by James P. Johnson, or Handful of Keys by Fats Waller, or The Pearls by Jelly Roll Morton. I think there's room for all of it. What is your view, Marcus?
Yeah, there's room for all of it. But yeah, he's right. Again, in terms of authenticity, um, I do think that the people who really want to bring jazz and classical music together, you have to have some authentic understanding of the language that you're wanting to bring into your world. And certainly James P. Johnson, who created stride piano, Jelly Roll Morton, who's at the forefront of jazz, period, right? From New Orleans. Fats Waller, who was just a complete genius and a magician at the piano. Certainly referencing these people can only strengthen your cultural point of view, right? So again, it's not to say that folks weren't thinking about it, or they were, but I think there could certainly be a lot more of it. I would like to see jazz music heard, especially by young people, especially children. I think it's very beneficial for them to hear Ellington's music, Thelonious Monk's music, Beethoven's music, Mozart's music, right? All of the music, the greatest music from all cultures at this point. We should train young people to be global citizens, not just in terms of their civic duty, right? But also just in terms of cultural understanding and development, and realizing that we all share we all share the planet, but we have different ways of expressing it. Different food that different tribes make, or different people from different parts of the world make. Same with music. And again, that's how you end up producing a truly inclusive society that would reflect our founding documents, the Constitution and Declaration of Independence.
What do you think the best way is to make that happen?
I think the best way to make it happen is if we all would listen twice as much as we talk, and if we would actually be open to well thought out disagreement, even when you're not. I think about it, like, to be in a jazz group, we have to accept other people's choices, whether we like them or not. Like, if I'm not the drummer, I can't really control what the drummer chooses to do. Okay, if I'm not the bassist is going to make his choices as he or she creates their music. So jazz music really teaches people how to coexist, have an individual strong personality and personal point of view, but we have to put it inside of a shared experience and a shared objective. And I think that's where a lot can be learned from this music.
I think the other aspect that you didn't mention is to do what you do, and to do what you and your trio, accomplish, requires listening.
Well, that's it. That's what I'm saying. Like, you got to listen to what other people are doing in order to know how to make room for them, and for them to make room for you. And that's kind of what I meant when I say listen twice as much as you talk. It's musically as well. Right? And a lot of times one of the best decisions you can make is to not play, so that something that someone else is playing can come out and be heard. Uh, and I used to have a rule in my band that if something goes wrong, assume it's your fault and fix it. And if everybody does that, typically you can fix it without even discussing it.
Sounds like a
And
great rule.
yeah, I think, well, yeah. And again, if you're really going to have a democratic society, that means that many voices are going to be heard. Now, don't get me wrong. Some of what people are going to say is nonsense, and you won't want to hear it. But it's very important that people's point of view, whether you agree with it or you think it's foolish or not, to have that open attitude of sharing experiences that will be diverse, will be different. This keeps us from becoming just like a homogenous society where everybody's thinking the same way and looking for the same things. And I mean, to me, that's boring.
I agree. I agree. So speaking of listening, it's been a while that since I've been aware of any new recordings from you or from your
Uh-huh.
trio, you know, I assume you've continued composing. I assume you've continued playing. Are new recordings in something we're going to see in the future?
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, I must have 7 or 8 um, albums that I haven't put out yet because since there's such a new landscape with streaming and with all these new technologies, I'm just kind of figuring out how I want to do it in a way that makes sense. So no, I continue always to work and record and uh, and play. It's just so yeah, there'll be product coming out this year and certainly into the future.
Well,
No
I
doubt
certainly
about
hope so because I didn't think it was possible to wear out CDs, but I have.
that. I understand.
You
No,
know,
no, yeah, no, absolutely. We have product right now, and yeah, I'm looking forward to having folks hear what we've been up to, both in terms of my trio, and I have a larger group with a lot of young people called the Modern Jazz Generation. We did a project about a year and a half ago, and we're going to put that out this year. So yeah, we have lots of projects that we can't wait to share with the public.
well, and now that vinyl's back, not that I think that your version of Rhapsody in Blue could fit on a single side of an album. But now that vinyl's
Right.
back, I think it'd be great to hear some of your albums on vinyl.
Yeah, I think that'd be cool. I know that's something that a lot of people are doing and a lot of people are into. I think it's great. It's funny how the past becomes the future and the present, right? So that's why I always tell people, uh, don't 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 think so much about when stuff was done. Just focus on whether it was good or will it be helpful. Could it be helpful to you right now? And if the answer is yes, as far as I'm concerned, then it's new.
And as long as you like it too. I mean,
Sure,
you
that's
know,
right.
we all have our own individual tastes, so we should listen
Absolutely.
to listen to.
Yeah, that's right. Again, that's the beauty of like an audience. I mean, people who don't know each other get all dressed up and come to an event to hear something, and everybody has their individual response to it in terms of how it moves them or what it means for them. And I think that's a very special part of music that people literally have their own individual view of it, but then collectively there's a general sense of the entire audience what they all felt. So I don't know. I think it's a great thing. So that
Well,
you know,
let me
yeah,
ask you about one audience because I mentioned this to you before we started, rolling on this interview, but I saw you with Wynton Marsalis and his band at New Orleans Jazz Fest on May 1st, 1996, and New York Voices Open. Then there was John Hendricks, then there was Cassandra Wilson, and then you guys went on about 10:45, maybe 11 o'clock, and had an hour set. And then for an encore, just after midnight, you played A Love Supreme, the entire composition. That separated the men from the boys, as from my experience, because there were people who couldn't go the duration of
right.
Supreme. Do you get a sense of that when you're on stage? Do you get a sense that people are sort of going, "Oh, I'm overdosing on good music"?
Sometimes you do. Um, Typically, I'm trying to make sure that what we're communicating to them is authentic and resonant and real. So I can't say that I'm thinking too much about it. But yeah, there are times where you wonder, are they with us? So but ultimately we can't worry about that. I mean, at the end of the day, we're going to play at the top level that we can perform at and hopefully give them a performance that is worthy of them sticking around to hear every note. We hope.
Well, for those of us who stayed through the entire concert, it is an evening I will never forget. It was truly incredible.
Well, thank you so much. And it's wonderful that you have those memories, right, that stick with you. And that's the thing. When you can take it with you and still feel the effect of it years later, uh, that's why we do this. That's the whole purpose that we have, that it will be transformative in people's lives in a good way.
Right. So we started our conversation with you mentioning that you were a young boy when you first heard Rhapsody in Blue. You've been playing it for decades now. The piece is going to outlive all of us. Um, but what surprises you most about the journey that you've had with George Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue?
Well, honestly, that it did change as much as it did. I mean, it was an idea, and I went to Peter Gelb, who at that time was president of Sony Classical, and it was an idea, and I wanted to do it. I thought it would be a really good way to start a conversation between jazz and classical music, maybe in a different way. I didn't really think, like, if you'd asked me then, oh, will you be performing this, 25 or 30 years from now? I would have said, I don't really know. I didn't think that that would be the case. So it's been great that it has happened, but I can't say that it was a plan that I expected it.
Well, and what do you think George Gershwin would say about what you had done with Rhapsody in Blue?
Oh man, George would be all about it. I mean, if he were alive today, he'd be doing that and more. So, I don't think he'd have had any issue with it because I think that's what he was doing himself. And I think he would have embraced all of the changes in music that have happened that we have. At least I would hope so. And certainly for me, I feel a lot of gratitude for all the great artists that I can access when I play this piece, and my own experiences as a musician throughout my life that I can access those any time I play it.